Modern offensive cyber operations no longer rely on human hands typing at keyboards. Attackers deploy automated, AI-driven kill chains that scan vulnerabilities, execute exploits, and traverse networks continuously. They operate around the clock, and their actions are processed in microseconds. Compare that to the standard defense protocol for a Tier 1 security operations center. When an alert fires at 2 in the morning, a human being has to physically wake up, walk to a machine, and log into a system. Once logged in, the analyst begins the manual triage phase. They must read the initial alert, then manually query distinct, often unintegrated security silos, checking network logs, endpoint data, and threat intelligence feeds to figure out what actually triggered the alarm. If the threat is real, the mitigation phase introduces another layer of physical latency. The analyst must navigate a user interface, point, click, and wait for the system to process the command to isolate a server or lock down an account. The time delta between these two processes is an insurmountable math problem. An attack completes its kill chain in fractions of a second. A human-driven defense cycle takes minutes and often hours to execute the exact same steps. This makes manual Tier 1 triage structurally inadequate. The adversaries adopted automation first. Failing to automate initial triage and response is no longer a resource issue. It guarantees a loss based entirely on a deficit of speed. To close this gap, security teams are abandoning manual log review and shifting to agentic AI automation at the Tier 1 level. This timeline illustrates the new mandatory standard for enterprise defense, the 1-5-10 benchmark. The goal is 1 minute to detect a threat, 5 minutes to complete triage with a root cause analysis, and 10 minutes to fully recover operations. When mapped against human cognitive limits, achieving this specific timeline is mathematically impossible. An analyst cannot physically read logs, build context, and document a root cause across disparate systems within a 5-minute window. Achieving competitive symmetry against modern threats requires extracting human processing from the initial alert triage entirely. The architecture of Tier 1 has to change. Earlier attempts to solve this problem relied on legacy programmatic AI. These systems operated on static rule sets, rigid correlation logic, and established behavioral baselines. Programmatic systems perform well within specific boundaries. They are highly effective at catching known anomalies, deduplicating alerts, and matching network traffic to established threat signatures. This flowchart demonstrates the structural failure point of the programmatic approach. The system processes standard inputs perfectly, but it cannot reason. When presented with a novel, uncategorized attack combination that falls outside its pre-programmed rules, the logic breaks. Because it cannot evaluate context, the system defaults to survival mode. It dumps raw, uncontextualized alerts directly onto the human analyst's desk. Legacy AI didn't solve the triage bottleneck. By firing an alert every time a static threshold was crossed, it merely shifted the burden, burying analysts under massive volumes of false positives. To move past rigid thresholds, security operations rely on this structure, the agentic closed-loop pipeline. The input layer requires 2 strict prerequisites before the system can function. First, it needs highly structured, mature incident response playbooks that define the organization's exact security policies. Second, it ingests thousands of labeled historical SOC tickets, containing every recorded event and response the organization has ever processed. These historical tickets undergo retrieval-augmented generation, compressing the raw data down into a dense, searchable RAG index. This compression is essential. Instead of forcing the system to read the entire ticket history linearly at the moment an alert fires, the pre-built index allows the agent to extract relevant lessons in microseconds. In the processing layer, a new alert arrives at the central large language model node. Instead of simply matching a signature, the LLM executes a dual query. It checks the playbook to see what the documented process dictates, and it simultaneously queries the RAG index to see how similar events were resolved in the past. Without requiring a human prompt, the LLM autonomously calls APIs to retrieve corroborating evidence from the network, endpoint, and identity silos. Finally, in the output layer, the agent synthesizes this data to generate a pre-populated case review and a prioritized recommended response action. Programmatic systems react to thresholds. This agentic architecture applies continuous, context-based reasoning to process alerts autonomously from start to finish. We can observe the effects of this architecture in production environments. An enterprise SOC for a Southeast Asian government agency faced a volume of over 60,000 incidents per year. Look at this plot representing their alert volume. The first automated function applied to this data is auto-clustering. The system analyzes thousands of isolated events and groups related alerts together, eliminating the need for a human to manually correlate them. Next, the system applies anomaly highlighting, instantly flagging behavioral deviations against historical baselines without analyst input. The system then evaluates the context to generate a prioritized risk ranking. It surfaces only the threats that pose a critical risk to the business. A human analyst previously required 30 minutes to manually correlate these logs. The automated pipeline delivers a finalized, validated case summary to the analyst in seconds. Similar results are evident in live deployments, like Cisco's SOC, where AI agents executing triage and compiling incident summaries resulted in a zero backlog alert queue. By compressing the manual triage phase from hours down to seconds, enterprise security teams mathematically achieve the 5-minute triage requirement of the 1-5-10 benchmark. The endpoint of this architectural shift is total functional replacement. SentinelOne has already completed this transition, replacing their entire human Tier 1 SOC operation with an LLM running their playbooks. Automating Tier 1 does not mean eliminating human defenders. It means elevating them upstream out of the data processing layer entirely. This diagram shows the structural shift to the AI operator. Operators no longer parse raw logs. They diagnose error patterns, manage escalations, and validate edge cases. When the AI errs, the operator feeds corrections back into the RAG index, ensuring the agent continuously adapts and improves. Automation shifts the human purpose in security operations. The job is no longer doing security, it's supervising and governing the AI that does it. Despite its speed, granting total autonomy to these systems carries a severe technical risk due to the nature of the processing layer black box. Notice the processing node in our pipeline. It becomes opaque. The LLM's reasoning cannot be audited from the inside, and policy cannot be strictly enforced. If a fully autonomous system incorrectly isolates a life support server, there's no clear forensic record explaining why. This opacity introduces model collapse. If an unsupervised AI trains exclusively on its own unvalidated outputs, its reasoning degrades, becoming homogeneous and unreliable. The only mitigation is bounded autonomy. A human in the loop must validate decisions before critical actions execute, anchoring the model and preventing collapse. Automating Tier 1 is a mandatory evolution to survive attacks executed at machine speed, but it is not a tool you can deploy and ignore. It demands rigorous data governance, continuous monitoring, and a highly upskilled workforce to control the machines defending the front lines.